Namaskar. Welcome to Women's Special Express Show. Today we have a guest whose life is full of stories. She loves listening, telling, and creating stories. She helps young kids to senior citizens, corporates to NGOs to discover their potential through her unique technique of storytelling. She is a story coach, motivational speaker, educator, and an entrepreneur. She is a founder of a Kid and Parent Foundation, which provides services for development of children, youth, and professionals. She has also founded a company called as Story Triangle, which is providing solutions for organizational growth. Her mantra of life is never let the child in us grow up. Her journey from high tech to high performance coach began with a simple story. Let's welcome Aparna Athreya, a great storyteller, on our show today. Namaskar.
नमस्कार प्रणाली जी और बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मुझे बुलाने के लिए एंड ऑल्सो बिकॉज इट इज सच अ प्लेजर टू मीट अनदर इंडियन अक्रॉस द सीज. हम तो बहुत हिंदुस्तानी लोग तो देखते रहते हैं इधर, लेकिन दूर दूर से भी हम अगर हिंदुस्तानी लोग को देखते हैं तो बहुत खुश हो जाता है. तो मुझे बहुत बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है कि मैं अपनी कहानी को इतनी दूर तक सुनाने के लिए बहुत अच्छा लगता है, लेकिन दूर तक सुनाने के लिए बहुत ही शौक है मुझे और बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. थैंक यू.
Wow, we are so honored to have you, and I'm so glad that you took out your time for this show, and you're here to give some other secrets which many people want to know. So, in this lockdown, how is it going, and how are you keeping yourself occupied?
It's a question on everybody's mind. What is this lockdown about? And I was also thinking कि ये lockdown हो क्या रहा है करके. And I was just drawing an analogy. जैसे जैकी चैन के जो movies होते हैं वो last में खत्म होने के बाद जो पोस्ट स्क्रिप्ट में दिखाते हैं वो ब्लूपर्स जो होते हैं ना, जो प्लान नहीं थे लेकिन फिर भी हो गए, जो मिस्टेक्स हो गए, जो अनकट सीन्स हैं जिसमें हीरो को भी तप्पड़ कभी कभी मिल जाता है और कभी कभी चोट लग जाती है, वो भी दिखाते हैं. तो दैट इज व्हाट this lockdown is like for me. If our life was a movie, at the end of our lives this one period will look like a uncut scene जो blooper है. It's crazy because it's unplanned. None of us ever imagined कि ऐसा होगा करके, और किसी को पता भी नहीं है कि कैसे डील करें. अगर ऐसा हुआ होता पहले तो हम शायद डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट कर लेते, बट तो हुआ नहीं है. And each of us is reacting in very different ways. Some of us are becoming more and more creative and inventive because situation is such, the mother of all inventions is need, and right now there is a need. There are some people, of course, you and I know that there are people who are struggling with it, with situations that are heart-wrenching. India is definitely in a situation where there are migrant workers who are not able to go back home, those who are stuck in their house, not able to get 2 square meals a day. It is really a very sad scene to see. And then there are some who are actually making hay while the sun shines. One of them are TV channels. जितना टीवी आजकल देख रहे हैं लोग, कभी लाइफ में कभी शायद नहीं किया होगा. So that's what the gaming world is prospering, the TV world is prospering, the digital media is prospering. Look at online platforms. Look at the online platform that you and I are using, and how many thousands of people are using that. So you see, it's different for everybody. For me, I think a time has come to take storytelling to a whole new level, because storytelling is an intimate sport. It's a contact sport. Jesse, people in America say contact sport for basketball and all of that. So this is a contact sport. You do it with each other, right? But because of the lockdown, and because we are not able to meet people to share it around the proverbial storytelling fire, we are not able to sit around that fire. So we are finding ways and means to share stories, ways and means to entertain, to inform, and to educate others through other means. And one of the most important means, of course, is the digital means. So we are finding ways to enrich the story experience with the constraints that we're operating under, and that has been a great journey of learning for me. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm thankful that this is a period in my life that I'm using to reflect and to learn new ways to do things.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that you're finding this storytelling as a contact sport. We could never imagine that word to it or phrase to it. It's interesting. So you are being like storyteller, and it's your profession now. You have a kid and a parent foundation who does this particular job of storytelling. You're training corporates and so many people. So the existing customers that you have, how are you keeping them busy, or to have their lockdown working out smooth?
Yeah,
When,
yeah, that's a good question, and it's been quite engaging in this lockdown as far as my work has gone, because for many kinds of people, this lockdown has been a time to uh, develop themselves. So it's a self development period, two important segments where I think a lot of self development is being focused on is the education and in the corporate space. Especially in the education space, what I have noticed is, unlike in corporates, where corporates are spending a lot of money towards upskilling their employees, schools do not have the time or the effort spent
hmm,
towards upskilling teachers. And because of that, teachers are constantly getting into a loop, a cycle of going over the same things that they know year after year after year. Whereas if you look at the science of education, there are
hmm,
multiple new things that have come into the field, multiple new ways and methodologies to teach, multiple frameworks that have come, things that work. Some of these frameworks, some of these methods are being used in the West, but India
hmm,
has not had the opportunity because teachers are pretty much unavailable towards upskilling. And I don't mean this as a sweeping statement. There are schools that do it, but many schools that don't. And this period in the lockdown has given an opportunity for everyone to look at their teaching force and educate them. That is where I have come in. There are subjects and there are topics that I'm very passionate about
hmm,
in terms of classroom methodologies, classroom transactions, multiple intelligence, critical thinking, design thinking, and of course, storytelling in all of these. So these are aspects that I have been working with a lot of teachers over the lockdown and through virtual means. So
hmm,
teachers have come from across the country, and it's been an absolute pleasure to share time with them. And if you look at the reactions of the teachers,
hmm,
it's amazing because um, there was a I was doing one on STEAM education, creative means to take STEAM into the classroom. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. That is what STEAM stands for. So I
hmm,
do work in STEAM and how you can use creative means to take science into the classroom or mathematics into the classroom. And there
hmm.
was teachers in the activities are going crazy. It's like children, who's saying, me first, I want to answer first, and
Wow.
one of the teachers, uh, after the class, she said, I am back in school, but in a totally different way. Now I'm sitting in a bench and I'm looking, and it has really changed the way I want to learn, and therefore the way I'm going to teach.
Wow.
There are really wonderful things that are happening in the teaching space in the education space, especially with
Hmm,
teachers. With corporates, of course, because of the lockdown, I've been working with certain corporates who have the time, downtime really time for them, and therefore they're using it usefully, resourcefully to upskill their employees. Many of them are in storytelling in business. Some of them are in personal branding, for example. Some of the topics are in ethics, and a lot of my work is also in diversity and inclusion. So I conduct storytelling circles with women on sharing their stories in terms of how diversity and inclusion has mattered to them and their organization. So that's been part of the work in the lockdown for me.
Wow, it's like you're working in all the spaces, starting from education, corporate, NGOs, and the women's solutions. Everywhere you're up bit, I feel. It's interesting. So, this lockdown, especially, is it is being a depressing time too for many. Uh, we know many who are going through it because they lost their jobs. Some of them have lost the means of the life. It's a lot of depressing times too. So, is there any solution you have through this storytelling? For keeping up the mental health.
Okay. Okay. Let me answer that with a story. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is not a story that is new, but it is a story that is relevant.
Hmm.
Once my mother shared the story with me because it's a story of another mother. Okay. So she told me the story. And the story goes like this: there is a young girl who gets married and leaves her home, and she goes and stays with her in-laws and her husband. And after a few months she comes home, and her mother of course is very happy that her daughters come back home. So बैठ के बात कर रहे हैं, and जैसे हम बात करते हैं ना डाइनिंग टेबल के ऊपर, हम दोनों बैठ के बात कर रहे हैं, और मम्मी पूछ रही हैं कि कैसे है, हाउस लाइफ, जिंदगी कैसे बिता रही है. तो शी सेज, मम्मी क्या बताऊं आपको, पता नहीं सब कुछ, मतलब जो भी मैं करती हूँ लोगों को पसंद नहीं है, नहीं तो कुछ भी करूं तो करेक्शंस दे देते हैं, कभी कभी मुझे कुछ है लेकिन सुनते नहीं है, पता नहीं ये क्या जिंदगी है, मैंने सोचा ही नहीं कि ऐसा होगा करके. पर आप बताओ, आप तो इतने साल से आप शादी किए हुए हो, तो आप बताओ मुझे कुछ इलाज है क्या इसकी, या ऐसे ही बिताना है करके पूछती है. Her mother smiles at her. She gets up and she goes into the kitchen. और ये लड़की सोच रही कि ये क्या है, मैं तो पूछ रही हूँ और मम्मी जा रही है, तो फॉलो करती है. सो किचन के अंदर जाती है, तो मम्मी अपने जो चूल्हा है वो स्टोव को ऑन करती है, एंड she has 3 vessels, and she starts boiling water in them. In one vessel she takes and she puts a carrot, and then she and her daughter is watching like this कि मम्मी क्या कर रही है, मैं तो प्रश्न पूछ के इंतजार कर रही हूँ और ये तो पता नहीं क्या कर रहे हैं, तो देख रही है. So in went the carrot in the first one, and in the second one she takes an egg and she puts it inside the second one, and in the third one she takes coffee powder and she puts it inside. And abhi to matlab she could not tolerate it anymore. Now she's asking me, what is going on, mama, I'm asking you a question, and what are you doing here? So she says, देख रहे हो ना क्या कर रही हूँ मैं. So she says, हाँ आप तो बॉईल कर रहे हो, पता नहीं क्यों क्यों ये सब बॉईल कर रहे हो. So she says, that's your answer. आंसर, ये आंसर कौन सी आंसर है. So she says, you see, this hot water is like how life will be, and you can react like the carrot or the egg or the coffee. You see, if you go into the carrot, what happens once it's inside the hot water? She says, well, it's going to be soft. She says, exactly. When you have hot water or adversities in your life, you can become soft, and you can, become squished and squashed up completely.
Hmm.
Or in an adversity, you can become like the egg, all hard inside, and very, very negative towards the whole environment. You just shut down and become really hard inside.
Hmm.
Or you can be like the coffee. And she says, I can smell the coffee. I'm waiting to have that coffee. She says, exactly. If you are like the coffee, then you transform the surroundings around you.
Hmm.
You don't let adversity affect you. You change your environment. It's up to you if you want to be like the carrot, the egg, or the coffee. And she pours the cup of coffee for both of them. And they sit down, and the daughter starts to drink, and she says, Mama, I have learned my life's lesson. Thank you. And I will always remember this every time I have my cup of coffee. So, this is the answer to your question, because uh, here is a situation where there is an adversity, there is a problem. We all understand that there's a problem, but we can really shut down and let it get the better of us, which is what is happening in certain cases. There are children who are depressed. There are adolescents who are going through a terrible time because it's isolating. You're alone, and they can't meet their friends, so they're going into a zone where they are lost in their own thoughts, which is pulling them further and further down.
Hmm.
And then there are husbands and wives who are having conflicts like never before, because they're having to deal with each other 24/7. It's crazy. They have never dealt with each other 24/7. They're just happy to spend 2-3 hours in the evening together, and that's what life was.
Hmm.
But now to bear husband and wife and your spouse for such a long time has been crazy. There were a lot of marital issues. So now,
Hmm.
do you let the situation get the better of you and become all अंदर से अंदर कठोर हो जाते हैं कि बस I am like this, अब इसका कोई इलाज नहीं है, बस मैं ऐसा हूँ, चाहिए तो ले लो नहीं तो छोड़ दो. We can do that. That is how we are when we become like the egg, all hard inside, and you can't change me, right?
Hmm.
Or if you're like the carrot, where you just say ki, you get into depression, you suffer inside, you become you lose your strength. Or you can really work with the situation, talk it out, with your spouse, or as an adolescent, find people who you can share with. Find a way to make your life turn a new leaf. It could
Hmm.
be by learning something new. It could be like by finding new ways to connect with friends, finding new friends, finding a friend in your parent. They don't have a friend in their parent, which is why they're to live under the same roof. So can
Hmm.
you bridge a gap with your parents itself? That will be a great way to sail through this together. So that's what I
Hmm.
would like to that's how I would recommend that one deals with the situation. Understand it, reflect upon it, and find a way to move forward with it, if possible along with those around you. So that way we are compassionate with each other, and we are learning to deal with ourselves in an adversity. Not only will this help in this lockdown, but it will be lessons learned that will keep you uh, in a positive frame of mind for the rest of your life. If we've dealt with this, we've hit rock bottom, we'll be able to deal with anything going forward. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it.
Wow. So these kind of stories definitely help people to come out of their mental blocks and whatever that they're going out, or also they can see somebody else's story and get inspired and move on. That's what
Absolutely.
you're asking us to do. Wow, it's interesting. So we have a lot to discover on storytelling, but before that, I would like to know how this, a special turn happened to your life from a software professional to a storyteller, or now a professional storyteller. How this turn or how this journey started?
Okay, yeah. So it's been a long and a roller coaster ride. It's not linear. I can tell you that. You're an engineer. You know what a linear graph is. This is not a linear graph. So it's been, it's crazy. There's been exponential growth sometimes, and it all started off a long, long time ago. I wonder whether you were even a teenager at that time or even younger. So a long time ago, when I used to be in the software industry, and I used to love to मैं तो कामचोर होती थी. काम तो अच्छी करती थी लेकिन बहुत चोर भी थी. जैसे ही कुछ काम आ जाता है बाहर, कल्चरल प्रोग्राम या कुछ, हाथ उठा लेती थी. And one of the most important things that I used to enjoy doing, which why I say important is because if you join the dots, those were the reasons why I landed up doing what I'm doing now. And that was in volunteering for corporate social responsibility initiatives. And I worked in big corporates. Jaise
Hmm.
aapne bataya, I was with Infosys, I was with Cognizant Technologies, I was with IBM, jahan pe there was a lot of CSR activities and in-house activities or development of people. So, so I remember a long, long time back. One of the times, so I used to keep volunteering, and volunteering में ऐसा होता था कि या तो वो health projects होते थे, नहीं तो education की projects होते थे. So ज्यादातर मैं education में, पता नहीं क्यों, लेकिन हुआ ऐसे कि मैं education की projects में volunteer करती थी. And what used to happen is that once in a while, once in a month or so, because these were corporate sponsors and we were employees, so they would ask us to go uh, to the to the centers where these projects are being run, जहां पे NGOs काम करते थे. Education was being given by NGO partners who were educators. हम जाते थे ऐसे volunteers बोलने के लिए कि हम भी इंटरेस्टेड हैं इस प्रोजेक्ट में, हम तो स्पॉन्सर की तरफ से आ रहे हैं करके ना. तो जब हम जाते थे तो वो लोग वेरी पोलाइटली बोलते थे कि मैडम आप कुछ भी कर लो, अंदर की बात यह है कि आप तो टीचर नहीं हो, तो कुछ भी कर लो. सो सो द फर्स्ट टाइम आई डिड दिस, आई रिमेम्बर this was when I was in I used to work in Chandigarh. I used to live in Ambala, and we went for a project which was I think in between Ambala and Chandigarh, Zirakpur mein kahin. There was one there was a center, there was an home where we went, and the NGO partner said कि आप मैम आप शुरू करो, कुछ भी कर लो. Now I was shocked because there were 50 children staring at me, and I didn't know what to do. And one thing which I always was, had with me was stories, because grandmother was a Sanskrit scholar. She was, she was the first graduate in honors, BSc honors, in her entire district in
Wow.
the 1930s.
Hmm.
And then she went on to become a teacher. She went on to become a headmistress in Seva Sadan. She was probably the oldest pre-Independence Day headmistress that they ever had. And her English was, it was, what can I say, it was really superlative. She would correct me in when I spoke as a child. And she, because she was a scholar, she knew mythology in and out, and she had her own perspectives, and she used to feed us stories for breakfast, lunch, dinner. My grandmother, unlike all women her age, many women her age, she used to
Hmm.
hate to cook. She would
Oh.
never enter the kitchen. हाँ,
Hmm.
वो मतलब बिंदास थी मेरी जो दादी थी. So she used to keep reading, and she used to keep telling us stories, catch hold of anybody who was listening to, willing to listen to stories. And I was a willing listener. So I knew a lot of stories because I used to have these intellectual discussions with my grandmother. So then when I was standing in front of these 50 people and they said, कुछ भी आप सिखा दो, I very hesitantly I asked, मैडम जी मैं कहानी बता सकती हूँ? हाँ हाँ, बोलो बोलो, कुछ भी कर लो. So I said, okay, and very hesitatingly I started telling a story to these 50 children. But once I started to tell, the children who were sitting like this started to sit like this. फिर ऐसे हो गए, फिर एकदम मतलब जैसे वो ट्रांस में चले गए. And I looked at them, and by the time I finished the story, They were in a different zone, and when I finished it, it was a second. They took a second to realize that I finished the story, and then they started to clap. ऐसे बजाए ताली कि मैं मतलब I have never seen such ताली ever. उसके बाद भी, and I was so delighted to get these claps, and पूछ रहे हैं कि एक और कहानी बोलो दीदी, कब आ रहे हो वापस, एक तो बता दो जाने से पहले. एंड आई वाज थिंकिंग, ओ माय गॉड, ये ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है कि मेरे क्लाइंट्स कभी ऐसे थाली नहीं बजाए और कभी ना ऐसे पूछे कि एक और लाइन ऑफ कोड लिखो, एक और प्रोजेक्ट करो. कभी
Right.
कभी ना ऐसे बोले. So I was so, I was so addicted to this
Hmm.
response that every time I would go, I would ask कि मैं बता दूं एक. So they would give me, and this continued for a long time. This is where I think the first seed
Hmm.
of storytelling was sown, and then it germinated, and then it grew because I kept on doing more and more of this, and I realized that there was more than just entertainment in this. The way
Hmm.
they were responding to it, the way I felt that their lives were looking brighter, looking more positive as a
Hmm.
result of something about the story. It's
Hmm.
not about me. It's
Hmm.
not about who said the story. It's not about the environment. It's just about something in the story that has touched them in their lives in different ways. Sometimes it makes a child think more. Sometimes it makes a child smile better. Sometimes it makes a child change the way they are. And that kept working in my mind until maybe it is time for me to speak to others in the NGO world. Because I used to do a lot of storytelling. I met a lot of NGO stalwarts, people who have really been accomplished, and people who were big in the world of social work. So one of them is Rajyalakshmi, and she is a professor in the science. So when I went to her and I asked her, I told her, this is what I'm a software professional, you know that, and I want to change my field. तो अभी चेंज करने से कुछ फायदा है क्या मुझे? I love to tell stories, and children like to listen stories. But आप बताइए कि इससे कुछ फर्क पड़ेगा? And she and others as well. There were other people. There was a lady called Poonam Natarajan who I spoke to, who was in Delhi, who was the director at the Children's National Trust, and she was a disabilities, not an expert. She was the last word in disabilities at the national level. They were all so very kind in retrospect when I think, because I knew nothing, and they were kind enough to say कि आपको करना है ये काम, इसलिए क्योंकि जो लोग अभी कर रहे हैं वो वो घुस गए हैं अंदर, और आप जैसे लोग जो बाहर से आ रहे हो, आप शायद कुछ परिवर्तन ले आ सकते हो. तो आपको करना है, you have to, because this field needs it. And they were kind enough to include me in their otherwise very accomplished world, highly qualified and accomplished world. So that time, without knowing anything, I said कि ठीक है, okay, big people are saying कि कर लो, करके कर ही लेते हैं, करके very brashly, with no with no, not too much of thought, I just jumped, I just took that leap.
Wow. Hmm.
And there has not been any turning back. But of course, it took a lot of hard work. I used to, after I moved out of IBM in 2009, I started to work with the university. I used to volunteer in the university for doing their field work, and then I started Kid and Parent Foundation, where people who were interested in this kind of work also started to join slowly, a small team of people. So we started to do work for for the university, and started to see कि ये projects में अगर stories बताएं तो कैसे react करते हैं, अगर कुछ creative activities करते हैं तो बच्चों के दिमाग बढ़ती है क्या करके, तो वो पूरा data points लेके. I was an engineer, so I could slice and dice data very well. So I would work with a lot of this data. That is what I could give the university back. And what I got from the university is a sense of understanding that there is as much science in storytelling as there is art in it. And this combination of art and science of storytelling have got me a long way, from 2009 when it originally started. So that's been my journey.
Wow. It's interesting to know that, from a simple working with the NGOs while you're at a field, and then moving on to, to the disabilities, to the educational world. It's fascinating. You just spoke about the science and the art of a storytelling. I think that's one of the key success point that you mentioned. So I think I have more of a aligned question here, that how a storytelling technique works for senior citizens, kids, to corporate leadership programs and marketing their products, and all the spaces that you're working in. How
Yeah.
come the one technique works for all?
Okay. So I think the place to start, or the premise to start on, is the fact that stories is among the oldest, probably the oldest form of communication that has outlived all kinds of other methods to communicate. Stories existed from prehistoric times. Stories existed as paintings, there were stories in the paintings, in the cave paintings that we even find today. So people started to convey ideas through the format of a story millions of years back. Even before language was invented, stories were invented, right? So that is why stories predate um, uh, man, really, So, in the sense that it's come up along with man, right? Because of that, everything today in the corporate world works through the power of storytelling, because stories are a very human thing. Okay, it's just human. We are wired, and you can go over the internet and you will find thousands of studies and thousands of experts talking about how the human mind is wired to work with stories. If I tell you this, as I'm telling you this answer, Pranali, what you're doing is you are receiving this whole thing as a story in your mind. Okay, it actually is received as a story, because you are not just listening to what I'm saying, but you're filling in gaps that come from your past experiences, that come from your knowledge. Okay, so you are actually building a narrative and you're storing it in your brain. And every time you see something around you that reminds you of this narrative keeps becoming stronger and richer and vibrant, with more and more experiences adding to it. This is the science of it. This is neuroscience. This is how our mind is wired. Okay, our neuroplastic brain receives information as stories. So that is why everything within a corporate, whether you're marketing your product, whether you're building trust with your employees in the organization, whether you're trying to brand yourself at a personal level, whether you're trying to create customer satisfaction, all of this will be done when you think of it through the world of stories, right? So what exactly do I mean when you say that, through the world of stories, is each situation will demand a different type of story. If you're going to tell, if you're going to run a product company, then what you need to understand is, does your product have a story? Or what story in this world is your product trying to solve? What story, in the sense, what problem is your product going to solve in this world? If you're able to solve a problem in this world, then that problem and solution is a story in one's life. So let's take the example of a company selling a product, such as maybe a creation of an ATM machine, right? Now, the problem that exists, which this ATM machine tries to solve, is the time and the effort that is spent trying to withdraw money by going to the bank, sitting in the line, going to the teller, and giving a check and receiving the requisite cash, right? So now this whole process used to take time, used to take effort, and it used to take a lot of money because you need to have so many tellers sitting there and trying to service people. This was a problem. And your product is serving as a solution to this problem, because you can have as many ATM machines as possible. So I don't have to, as a consumer, I don't have to walk up to the bank. I can go to the nearest ATM, which I'm sure will be not as far as the bank branch will be. I can withdraw how much I want. I can withdraw if I want
Hmm.
500 rupees or 520 rupees as well. It is possible. We don't have that format, but it is possible through an ATM machine, right? So now the narrative is this: there is a human who had a lot of problems going to the bank, waiting in the queue when his daughter is crying at home, and he should be looking after her, but he needs the money also. So he's going and standing in the queue, waiting for the teller to call him, giving it and receiving it, and going back to a very crying child and a very cranky child. But the solution with this ATM machine is you can make a quick dash and withdraw exactly how much you want without having to stand in line, without the time and effort that you have to spend, and come back possibly to a less crying child or a smiling child. So now this is how you're changing a person's life. You're creating a story, you're changing the story to a new story. Now, if you're selling a product such as this, you need to change the story that you're telling. You need to change the story of someone's life. That's what is the story. Or there are today a lot of salesmen who will just go and say, buy my product, it's the best. Buy my product, it's cheap. But the question is, what is the story in my life that you're to change? Identify that story, tell me that story, and then I would be more willing to buy it, because I receive this information as a story in my life, and I'll be able to process it better. I'll be able to see sense in your story. So stories are methods to make sense in this world, right? So that was a quick example for you to just understand how we can use stories in thousands of ways to drive home objectives, organizational objectives as well as personal objectives.
So this is very interesting to understand how a story can make a difference in product marketing. So right now there are so many people who are doing online marketing, and there are product experts, marketing experts who are also using this story approach, is what I see. What they essentially do is they essentially create their product as a competitive superiority, and of course they tell a story and try to brand it. But when it comes to story triangle, your organization and you, we see it's not just a product, but you also elevate people behind it.
Yeah.
You also want the leaderships to grow behind it, the whole organization to come together and come to a level where the not just the product become the story, but the people become story. We'd
Yeah.
like to know more of that different approach handling for the corporate specifically.
Okay. All right. So let me begin with, doing a little bit of geometry. Okay. The reason why story triangle is called the story triangle is because there is, it's a well documented theory that every storytelling experience has has a tripartite involvement. Right? There are three entities involved, and that's what makes it a story triangle. And the entities that are involved are the teller. If I'm the teller, then the teller and the listener. The listener is a very important entity in the storytelling experience. And the third most important is the story itself. So when the teller, the listener, and the story come together, great things can happen. Right? So that is what is story triangle, and that is why I thought of choosing story triangle as the name. So to put it in the context of corporates, what happens is that in the corporates, stories is the fabric on which an organization begins, sustains, and grows into the future. It is the stories which really stay with the organization. You see, there will be a set of founders who started off this. I'm from Infosys, and you know the story of Narayan Murthy and the 7 founders who started. Everybody knows the story, right? Why does everybody know the story? Everybody knows the story because this story was told time and time again until it became a part of the folklore of the organization, until the whole world remembers the story of how it started. And the founders need not be operational anymore, but the stories are. The stories do the magic, generation after generation. Today it is the nth generation of Infosians who are there, but still the story is alive. Stories such as the founding story. There are many stories, and this is what creates the fabric of an organization. This is what keeps the organization um, tightly uh, woven into the ethics on which the organization has been created. It is the stories which keep the trust between employees, between the leadership and employees, and most importantly, between the employees and the clients, right? So it is these stories which will keep the relationship alive, and it is this narrative that outlives the product itself. You see, because products will keep getting competitive products. You will keep getting better and better products, but it is those products that survive, or those services that survive, which have the best story to tell.
Yeah, and I think there becomes also a trust that forms a trust between a customer and the product owners. And this whole story, it's not just becoming viral, but it's it has some roots in it. So the
Yeah,
story which does not have a heart or a root, it will never grow. That's
absolutely.
also an essential part that you just answered. Um, so you are working that story triangle for the corporates, where you are giving some paid solutions, but I also know behind the scenes that you're also working for the projects which does not give you anything, but you do it for your own satisfaction, and you
Yes.
know that this will change somebody's life,
Yeah.
and it's an immense joy to work with them for you. I'd
I
like to know something more about it.
Sure, sure. So, yes, it is right. There is a lot of work that I do. Sometimes it pays, a lot of time it doesn't. And no matter whether it doesn't pay or pays, the place where I find the most satisfaction, and I guess the most transformation on the ground, is in the social segment, is with the work at the grassroots level. And there are all kinds of work I've done for many years now. In fact, the first brush with storytelling started off with working for NGOs through the corporates, but even after that, because I found them and that place as the place where I belong. I went there naturally because that's how I started off. So I could go there and I felt safe. So that's where I started.
Hmm.
I think what happens in the grassroots level is willingness to just listen, दिल खोल के सोचते नहीं है कि क्या इसमें कुछ ये एडवांटेज मिलेगा, कॉम्पिटिटिव एज क्या है इसका, ये मुझे भी सीखना है, मुझे भी एक डिप्लोमा करना है, मुझे भी एक प्रोफेशनल बनाना है, ये सब सोचते नहीं है, बस ये कहानी सुनते हैं दिल से. एंड व्हेन दे लिसन टू इट, that is when real magic happens, real upliftment happens, because you're listening to the story for the sake of stories. You're connecting with one another,
Hmm.
where it is the story which is binding us. There is no motive that's behind that, you see. So just so a lot of times I have sat down and said a story because I felt a story was required at a particular time. I did not necessarily want to teach them anything. I did not want to hear a response from them. I just wanted to share a story. And the outcome of that is, when I share a story that is just meant to be shared, is the beginning of a chain of stories. When you just tell a story in order to share a story, somebody else will share a story just to be listened to.
Wow.
And then begins a journey where we share with each other, we connect with each other at a very fundamental human level, where there is just listening and a sense of fulfillment of telling and receiving the story. So that happens. And that is where I think a great sense of satisfaction, a great sense of inner growth happens. And this happens some of the times, but some of the times, of course, I'm working towards very specific outcomes. A lot of times, for example, I have worked with NGOs where the NGO educators need to be upskilled because they're working with all kinds of children who come from traumatized homes, children who are come from households where their parents are not available. Both the parents are working, or they are migrant workers, so they're away. So these children are left to fend for themselves. So now these NGO teachers are working with these kind of children. Now it becomes very important that these teachers know how to be empathetic, know how to connect with a child. It's not just about knowing what to teach, but also how to teach and how to elicit a willingness to learn, build them to a point where they're ready to learn, ready to receive, ready to change their lives, right? So I've worked with teachers in the NGO sector to help them understand how they can work with new ways to connect with children, new ways to teach, new ways to look at education itself, and not necessarily through textbooks or through stereotyped knowledge that we often hear about. So I work with teachers. I've also worked directly with children to help them emotionally stabilize. Very often they go through very difficult times. They go through ups and downs in their lives. So I work with children who are sometimes coming from households which have domestic violence, or children who feel abandoned, children who 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 are not in an emotionally safe spot. So, listening to their stories, uh, telling stories of others who are in similar situations, telling your own story, telling a story of hope, for example, are stories which will change things. How and for how long, nobody knows. But there is a path towards change. There is a path towards upliftment and a path towards growth every time you share the right story. So I've worked with children on that as well. And of course, I continue to work with all kinds of NGOs. Some of them are in the health sector, So how do you tell stories which will help the community eat better food, breastfeed, for example, or gender awareness? How do you treat the opposite gender? How do you respect one another? How do you know that there is more than two genders today, and how do you accept them? And so on and so forth, right? So those kinds of work is what I'm involved in. And I can only say that in this world it takes all kinds of people to make this world, but it takes one beautifully told that connects with them to make a difference, no matter whether they come from a rich household, a poor household, an educated household, an uneducated household, just anyone. You tell the right story and infinite things are possible.
Wow. And that's to, understand that you're working with so many people, from all kind of people, and you're helping them at whatever you can. It's very few who really get that opportunity in their lifetime, to help people and in a right way. So I'm very happy to understand that you have got a tool to connect with everyone at all possible levels, but emotionally connect is a very different level. Not many can connect through. Like many a times we love our heroes, where which we see on the screen, but in real life heroes are very different, and you are one of the hero for someone, and I'm very happy to know that. And I'm so glad that our viewers got such a guest who is working through her heart, for whatever her passion is, and she has left her job just to do this and connect with the people. It's immense joy to understand, and I'm very sure you must be getting huge satisfaction towards your end of day to sleep better. I mean, very few can get that kind of
Yeah,
blessing.
yeah, yeah. I can get a good night's sleep, every night. And there are times when my daughters, comes and asks me, "Ki, how do you sleep like this?" So I say, a day of fulfillment is a day of good rest. So, and
Wow.
it's for everyone. It's for everyone. Whoever feels that they have, and it's not that I do something that others don't do, Pranali. I do a lot of things that even others do. But for me, this is, I feel a sense of fulfillment, and that is what keeps me going every day, makes me want to wake up, tomorrow. So there is a concept called Ikigai. I wonder if you've heard of it. It's a Japanese concept. So, so Ikigai is a concept when you are able to, there are four quadrants in our life. One is passion, profession, vocation, and mission. So mission is what the world wants. Passion is what you want. Profession is what you have to do in order to earn your money, right? And vocation is the kind of things that you have to learn to do. um, when all of these four things come together, right, it's a state which the Japanese called as the Ikigai, and they say that if one reaches their Ikigai, it is the reason to wake up every morning, right? So often I feel that I'm a path which will take me to my Ikigai, because I find reason to wake up every day, to find something new to learn, to find something new to make a difference in. So, and I hope that you and all those who you touch the hearts of also find your Ikigai, because finding your Ikigai is really the sweetest spot to get to in one's life. Every day you have a reason to wake up. How beautiful will that be?
Right. I think that's where my this journey also started, and I'm so hopeful now through your story that this story will help others to find their own sweet spot, the Ikigai.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know if the viewers know how talented and how many things that you're doing, but all you guys, Pranali is a superwoman. I mean, I've never seen anyone who's achieved so many things. It's impossible. She's just doing, you just have to say anything and she'll say कि मैं तो कर चुकी हूँ, नहीं तो कर रही हूँ, नहीं तो करूँगी. So
Oh my God,
she's
that's an overstatement, I feel.
not at
But
all.
uh,
Not
it's
at all.
just that the way you have interest, many others also, and they just want to crawl their own spaces to find out if, we can try out this, we can try out that.
You're so young, Pranali. You have such a great life ahead of you because of being passionate in many things. And very often, I think the more curious you are, the more wonders you are about all those things around you, the farther you get in your life, and the happier you will be at all times. And you also inspire that in others. So really, I'm inspired by you.
My God. Thank you so much. It's just a small part that I've started, and this is where the change begins. When you hear someone, you want to be like that. When you see the on-screen actresses, oh, you want to look like that. You want to go find out the parlors, find out the dresses. It's there, right? But when you stuck at some beautiful point, and you see that that is lifelong beautiful, you want to be that way. And that's where this show is all about. We just want to put this kind of examples in front of everyone, and want to see that this also can be a way to look at it. This also can be a very beautiful life to live at. And we are so precious to get this kind of a life, so we better use it. So
Absolutely. Well said.
yeah. So coming to the questions of stories, uh, telling story to the kids kind of help you have a very organic growth of Kid Parent Foundation. But this Kid Parent Foundation is nothing but bridging the gap between kids and parents which is necessary in all the societies. You took it from eastern to western, the whole coast, they need that kind of the gap. Now that I'm a mother, I know, how much we struggle to connect with the kid. We are working. So how this kid parent foundation now for the lockdown special have something very different that we all can look forward to.
Okay, so yes, this lockdown, I have worked a couple of times with parents as well on parenting workshops on how finally parents have the time with their children, where you can actually think beyond, you know, have they finished their homework, have they finished their food, have their daily needs been met. You have more time than that finally, right? And thankfully this lockdown has given all professionals that discounted time from travel. Especially I'm talking to you from Bangalore, so it's nightmare in Bangalore trying to travel to workplaces. So that time has been saved, and you're sitting at home and you're logging in from home. So you can actually use this time to restart a relationship with your child, no matter what your how old your child is. Your child can be a preschooler, your child can be an adolescent, or your child can be married in another home. It's really a great time to reflect and see whether there are things that you have aspired as a father or a mother, and you've not been able to do it only because you've not had the time or you've not had the opportunity. Here you have the time and the opportunity. So I've been telling them about how you can work on many things. Storytelling is not the only thing. Stories is really a natural outcome of conversations, right? So I've been encouraging parents and children to sit down and just talk as if the gadgets have not invaded our lives for some time. Just sit down and just talk. Talk about what each one likes, or memories about things that have happened, that were sometimes good, sometimes funny, sometimes bad. But just talk, and the act of just talking will reignite a lost art in the humankind. And who best to do it than with your children, because you want that, right? No, there is no parent alive who does not want to have a strong bond with your child, right? You may or may not want to have a strong bond with another girl or another boy, but with your children, it's a done thing, right? It's your own. And this is the best time to create this very a bond that is built not on a material bridge, but a bridge of love, a bridge of empathy, a non-judgmental bridge. And that is possible when you can just talk with each other, learn about each other, and you will be surprised by the kind of responses that come out from parents. Especially parents of adolescents tell that they don't know their children, they don't understand their children anymore. uh, Adolescent children do not want to make any effort towards their parents. But now there are multiple households where adolescents are finding a need to connect with their parents. So if you have to connect, why not connect with them in the right way? So stories will anyway happen. The moment you start talking, stories will happen. याद है वो किया हमने उस दिन, याद है 2 साल पहले, वो शादी में याद है. So we will tell stories. There is no doubt about it, right? So but we just have to talk. So so that's what I've been. So and when it comes to very young children, there is also a great. See, they're not going to tell. They don't have too much of life behind them to talk about memories. But what you can do is create memories for the future. So sitting with them, cuddling with them, telling them a story from your child. So there are different kinds of stories that you can tell. You can either tell folk tales to them. Folk tales are small tales, very regional. So you have American. So you have you have Native American folklore, which is huge. I don't know if you know about it. Then there are the Inuits and the Mayans, and from South America, and Inuits from the north, and you have all kinds of stories that are there in Native America. But India is rich, one of the richest nations filled with stories. You have Hitopanishad, you have Jataka tales, you have Panchatantra, you have all kinds of stories. So they're all folk tales. So you can tell a folk tale. You can also tell a mythological tale, because India is rich with, with the Mahabharata and Ramayana. You can tell stories from the Quran. You can tell stories from the Bible as well, right? So these are also highly enriching, not just in being a good story alone, but leaving lessons, indelible lessons, all through our lives. So you don't have to tell the lesson to them. You don't have to tell the lesson to them. You can just tell them the story. The lesson will be learned whenever it needs to be learned, right? So you can tell them stories that are of mythological, genre. And then there are, of course, the third kind of stories, which are personal stories. So telling about Pranali's childhood stories to your son is a great way for your son to see how the life of his parents were, and how they have become who they have become, because it is what they listen to that will shape them into who they will become. Not because you're telling them to be somebody, but because they are observing you and they are learning from what they observe and what they hear. That is how children learn. And telling them, beta, you need to be very clean, you need to be very honest, you need to be very goal oriented, you need to be very aspiring, blah blah, they're all words. They don't leave any learning in the child. They just leave a child frustrated. But telling them about how you struggled, or how you succeeded in your life, will let them know consequences and choices they have in their lives that they should use wisely. So telling personal stories are highly effective. From the time your child is very small, they'll be capable of understanding, even as old as 5. So make sure you use this time to not just tell folk tales, and you can, of course, tell mythology, because I feel that our mythology is so spectacular, it's magnificent. So tell that to them. But don't forget to tell your own story. Tell the story of your parents. Let them know who their grandparents were and how their grandparents were when the grandparents were young and when you saw them as young parents, right? Tell them about your sisters, your siblings. Let them learn through, about their family through your words. And that will truly give them a sense of pride. I belong to this family that has so many rich stories. I am the daughter or the son of these parents who have gone through so much in their lives. And I know that I should be as good as them, if not better. That sense comes when they feel a sense of pride and a sense of belonging. So so that's what I think we should do as parents. That's what I've been telling parents on the workshops as well. I'd be happy to do a workshop for you guys, in case you want to
Love to
listen to what I
join
have
that.
to say.
Yeah, because it's interesting, now we all know these facts, but some people don't have the skills to connect. I think the workshop will, kind of help and enrich us better. Yeah, we
Absolutely.
are looking forward to hear, this kind of workshop from you. It's very essential, especially in this lockdown series.
Yes. Yes.
So now that we talk a lot about stories, and we are towards the end of our show, so I'd like to take you further for a rapid fire round, which is a round that kind of just adds a fun to us, but it also helps our viewer to know what our guest is. The story that engaged you the most.
I think the story of Ramayana is one of the stories which has taught me so many life lessons, and it is not just the story of Rama, which I'm inspired by. It's the story of Sita. It's the story of Urmila. It's the story of Hanuman. So if you ever spend some time on Ramayana, anybody should do it. I think it's truly inspired me a great deal.
The most unworked area that can be improved through this storytelling technique.
I think mental health is a place where there is a lot of work that can be done using the power of stories. We're just scratching the surface, and it's a long but I think a transformational journey that awaits for stories to be used in the world of mental health and towards working with people in the senior citizen space. That's the other place related, because senior citizens have issues with mental health because of the way their lifestyles change, especially in the modern world. So geriatrics and storytelling is a pretty much untouched zone, and a lot can be done, is my opinion.
Hmm. Your favorite book? I know that you're a very vivid reader and you just grab books wherever you can.
Yes. I think the book of The Happy Prince
Hmm.
uh, is a great book. So if you can find that, you should read it. And there are, of course, many books that I am inspired by. One of the other books as an adult, which I truly loved, was the autobiography of a yogi, which I'm
Hmm.
sure a lot of you have read, and it's quite life changing. So it's if these there are a lot of books. It's very difficult to answer this question.
Hmm. Interesting. Now that you read so many books, you tell so many stories. If you had to write one book or write one story, what it would be?
Hmm. I think the story would be discovering myself every
Hmm.
day. So I
Hmm.
think that's the journey that I'm on. I'm on a journey of discovery. So that's what I think I will do the most justice to, because it's myself, and I think everyone needs to understand themselves further, and I'm working on myself. So I think that's the story that I would like to write about.
The best storytelling movie that you encourage that everyone to watch?
Okay, so again, a tough question, but I think the best movie that I have ever watched, even though it's an English movie, is
Mhm.
Forrest Gump. I don't know how many of you watched, probably the whole world has watched. But the
Yes.
reason why I thought that that movie was truly the best movie was because of just the way they have driven home the point of the power of faith, the
Hmm.
power to transform comes out so beautifully in that movie, that it's a life changing movie, not just for me, but for many others, I'm sure.
So now that we are very towards the end of this round, and before you go, we always like to take advice from our guest. What is the best advice that you can give her to pursue her what she wants to, and to be your very best at what she wants to do at?
Okay. Okay. Right. So this is something that I work with a lot of corporate women on, and there are three things that I think are most important when it comes to women of the modern world who are not donning one hat at any one time. So they're doing all kinds of things. They're aspiring to do a great deal more. I'm talking of modern urban world, right? So the three things which I think are most important is: one, whatever you choose to do, whatever it may be, make sure that you take ownership of it. And this I say to all those women who decide to be mothers, who decide to be corporate professionals. If you're going to take on something, make sure you take ownership of it, not a half hearted attempt at it. Please don't be a half hearted professional, or worse, a half hearted mother. Whatever you're doing, take total ownership of it. The second thing, which I think is most important, is whatever you choose those things that you find passion in, because it is only passion that will keep you alive with whatever you've taken on, not today, not 5 years from now, but all through your life. It's only those things that you can have passion for is something that you should choose. So make sure you're passionate about what you choose. And the third thing is, this is something that I've been really working on, is mastery. Mastery is something that you constantly work with to become better and better and better, not in terms of the uh, the marks that you get or the assessment that you receive for it, but truly about how good you feel you are in what you've chosen. How much of mastery have you achieved? Not for the outside world, not about it's not about your grades, but how much of mastery have you found in yours? So, if you were to just take the first letters, ownership, passion, and mastery, that's my opium for success. So, what's your opium for success?
So we'll keep this formula in mind, and I'm sure your advice, being you here and telling us this kind of stories, will help inspire all other viewers who are watching this show. Thank you for being here, Aparna ji. It's been a great pleasure to understand this huge potential technique that we always had it, but we never use it probably. Please keep tuning to Women's Special Express show, where we have guests like Aparna ji who inspired through their own stories. And if this was a story of a storyteller, I'm sure you guys liked it. I just being here conversing her in the real time was a real immense pleasure to me, and I'm sure this has been a pleasure to you all. We'll keep tuning to Women's Special Express show. We'll come back with such kind of guests more and more on our show. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali. Thank you. And, there's an old African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with the whole world with you. So that's what you've done. You've given me an opportunity to go along with you. And you're calling so many other women to go along with you. So I think the destination is far and not just a fast and quick stopgap. So I'm very happy to be part of this. और मुझे उम्मीद है कि you will be the person who gets people to tell their stories, to get people to inspire others with their stories, and you become that fulcrum that makes everything come together. So good luck to you on that, and I will not miss any of your shows. So thank you for the opportunity to be in one.
Thank you so much.
I let go of my claim on you. It's a free world. You look down on where you came from sometimes, but you have this place to